SBC Media.
Welcome to iGaming Daily, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe. Supported by SBC Summit Latino America, bringing together the leadership teams and product specialists from retail and online operators in Latin American markets.
Discover the potential of Latin America's booming iGaming and sports betting markets at SBC Summit Latin America, the premier industry event in the region. Join SBC at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Miami from October 31st to November the 2nd. Register now at sbcevents.com.
The Premier League gained another betting partner lately when Nottingham Forest, who I should add are my hometown team, announced a new front-of-shirt sponsorship deal with Callum Sports. This marked a continuation of a trend which has seen top-flight English clubs sign deals with Asian betting partners, many of which are not actually active in the UK market. This also comes against the backdrop of a debate around betting reform in the country, epitomised by the Gambling Act Review, which has included a very lively discussion around the visibility of betting in football. I'm Ted Orme-Claye, Senior Journalist of SBC News, and I'm returning to podcasting duties in this episode of iGaming Daily, sponsored by the upcoming SBC Summit Latin America, and today I'm being joined by George Harborne, SBC's Sponsorship Director, and Callum Williams, Insider Sports Business Journalist. Before we start breaking down this topic and what it means for both UK betting and UK sports, how are you both? George, are you suitably recovered from SBC Summit Barcelona last week?
I'm not. I'll be honest. I'm not sure any of us are suitably recovered from the summit last week. It was such a brilliant week, such a long week as well, with all of the events that took place and the meetings. And there's so many people to try and get around and have a conversation with. I think you almost have to take a few extra days to recover from it once you're done. But yeah, I'm getting there. But it was a fantastic event. And we should probably add, with this Latin America Summit coming up soon, I know you've already mentioned it, that's going to be another absolutely killer event. I was at that one last year and it was superb, and it's destined to be bigger and better this year as well.
And Callum, how are things with you?
Yeah, I wish I was in sunny Barcelona last week, but yeah, it seemed like a great event, one of the biggest SPZ event to date. And yeah, I'd much rather have been in sunny Barcelona than grey and rainy Manchester. So yeah, it's all good on my end, to be fair.
Okay, great stuff, guys. And let's just get into the meat of the conversation. So to get the ball rolling, can you give us a breakdown of this influx of Asian betting partners? Who are these companies and who have they partnered with in the Premier League? Callum, as the Insider Sport representative here, could you take the lead on this one, please?
Yeah, sure, Ted. I think with football sponsorship right now, when it pertains to gambling operators, they're kind of in this weird time because there's still deals being made. I mean, BK have just signed a recent one with Aston Villa, and Fun88 have also renewed their deal with. Well, they still have a pre-existing deal with Newcastle United, but the most recent one was with the Asian sportsbook provider Callum Sports with Nottingham Forest, who signed a 2-year deal last August, I believe. Now, Callum Sports, they also have deals in place with Real Madrid and Milan, and so there still seems a space in the market for these football sponsorship, these football gambling sponsorship front shirt deals to be made. But in essence, this is also in the backdrop of the recent Premier League ban, which is set to come in 2026 for the removal of all gambling operator sponsorship on front of shirts by the end of 2026. So, yeah, and in the topic of Asian betting operators as well, I know there was the Manchester City. They have a deal in place with AXBet. As an official Asian betting partner. Now, there has been a bit of confusion surrounding that deal. I know the Daily Mail reported in an article back in November 2022. They kind of questioned the addresses and operations of AXBet, and it's kind of caused a bit of conflictions and a bit of confusions and motives behind the deal. I know there's also been a bit of controversy surrounding BK8. They previously had a deal in place with Norwich City, but they got removed in 2021 due to sexually provocative social media marketing campaigns. But I mean, it didn't stop Aston Villa for them to agree a deal with a 3-year deal with BK8 as well. So I think there's still a market there for, I mean, especially the Asian betting operators as well. So, but as like I said, the front of shirt gambling sponsorship ban is looming in 2026. So yeah, it's an interesting time, to be fair.
And George, is there anything you'd like to add on that one? Very thorough breakdown of that as well. Thank you, Callum.
Yeah, it's a solid breakdown. I think the only thing to add is, like, other than Betway, who, you know, do have a UK focus and a really kind of global outlook with their partnerships that they do and the types of deals that they do globally. The majority of the other betting operators, well, all of them, do have that Asian focus, whether it's a WA8 or whoever. Kind of touched on BK8, 6686, gone on the sleeve at Wolves, and Callum that were kind of prompted this discussion today. Yeah, all of that Asian focus. So it's an interesting trend to see in the Premier League.
And so something we've noticed is that the bulk of these Asian betting companies are not actively taking bets in the UK. Like, after the Forest deal got signed, I went and checked out the K1 Sports site, and it says we're not currently active in the UK, but we will be soon. I'm paraphrasing there, but that's essentially what it says. But on the website, it also still says that they're licensed by the UK Gambling Commission, and they have the Be Gamble Aware logos on there, and all the usual sort of stuff you'd expect. So, George, if you could just take the lead on this one, how are these companies actually getting licensed here, and why are they partnering with Premier League teams if a lot of them aren't even actively taking bets in the market?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked on this before on a couple of other podcasts. Like, the Premier League has a global broadcast feed, so it's a league where if you want to be seen, in Asia aligned with Premier League football, you have to have a UK license to be able to do the deals, to be in the game, to be seen, overseas. That isn't the case across the European leagues, La Liga, Serie A, the Bundesliga. All of those leagues offer, regionalization through technology, digital replacement technology on LED boards and everything else. So, notwithstanding the fact that there's now a ban on shirt deals in Italy, in Spain for gambling operators, even before that, you saw a lot more regional deals that were truly regional because they could advertise on a regional LED system rather than what the situation is in the UK. So if you want to be seen in a match that includes Manchester United or Arsenal or Manchester City and obviously Nottingham Forest, Ted, then you need to be in a position where you've got that UK license. Now, again, slightly different to other markets, the UK licensing situation is that most of these operators, and I can't think of any that don't have this setup, won't have their own license. They'll essentially access a UK license through a third-party white label provider. So rather than having to go through, I guess the full extent of the rigorous challenges that it is to get a UK license, it's a bit more of a watered-down version where essentially they can get their domain, their trading name, and all the rest of it added to a third-party license operator, and then they can start advertising straight away. And it doesn't take long at all. If you search a few of the names that are there to kind of see where a lot of these, where a lot of the Asian operators kind of sit with their licenses on the white label side of things.
Yeah, just to piggyback on George's point there as well. I think the Premier League's such a valuable and lucrative brand to advertise across. I know it's TV rights and TV revenue. It just blows all the other European leagues out the water, and so to get that type of exposure in a Manchester City versus Manchester United match, or for Ted again, a Nottingham Forest versus Villa match, it's such a huge platform to advertise your brand, and also we talk relating back to the Asian market. I know that there was a push maybe about 10 years ago on the Chinese Football League as well and what they were trying to do. Now I think that might have simmered, but no, I mean football is still primarily number one sport when it comes to advertisement. I would say.
Yeah, absolutely, and the Premier League's the biggest league in the world, so it makes sense to make sure that you're being seen in this league.
Just like to say, I appreciate the nods towards Forest here, lads. Sometimes easy to forget about us as a Premier League team, but yeah, I do appreciate the moral support, especially after Callum's team, City, beat us solidly 2-0 at the weekend. But that's the last I'll mention of that. Of course, you've both made a very good point here regarding the Premier League. It is by far the most visible football league, if not probably one of the most visible sports leagues in general across the world. So it's not all surprising, really, that these companies are targeting visibility themselves within that. However, Callum, if we can just stick with you on this one, you mentioned earlier on about how these companies are also partnering with some other European clubs. You mentioned Inter Milan. So this clearly isn't a trend that's just occurring in the UK. Could you just give us a breakdown of what the situation is looking like in other major European football scenes?
Yeah, sure. I mean, George alluded to the betting bans in Italy, Serie A, or in La Liga in Spain. There's a full no gambling ban on kits over there in those countries, but they have found different avenues and different methods to get on board and partner with gambling operators. I know Real Madrid, if we relate back to the Callum Sports deal with Nottingham Forest, they've also got a deal in place with Real Madrid and Inter Milan. Now they're two of the biggest and most iconic teams in Europe, and they're not essentially kit sponsorship deals, but they've found unique ways of being a partner of Callum. And yeah, they're creating different activations and different digital brand marketing deals with those two clubs. So they're finding different avenues and different ways of partnering with these gambling firms. And I also know that 6686 Sports, they have a deal. They've recently signed a deal with Wolves, but also Liga side AS Monaco. So they're also kind of they're going down a similar route to Callum Sports and different type of avenues and partnerships in terms of marketing with those type of deals.
I think just to add to that, I think you'll be hard pressed to find any kind of top European side or that doesn't have, if you pick out the top handful of teams in Serie A, couple in La Liga, the Bundesliga as well, I think you'll be hard pressed to not find an Asian betting partner at one of those clubs, just because of the technology that they have available in those leagues that enabled those deals. Every game that they play can be beamed back and into Asia, and the branding can be seen there. I think in addition to that, the aggregation of those rights. So, if you consider that all of the other teams that play against those teams have an opportunity to sell advertising specifically for the games that they might be playing against them. They might not be big enough to have an Asian betting partner themselves, but, if you're a team that sits outside that top echelon of clubs, then when that top, 4 or 5 teams come to your stadium a year, they might aggregate those games and sell some Asian betting minutes back into Asia specifically for the visit of those teams. So yeah, it's not going to go anywhere either. But I think, just to recap, the key difference is the UK can't do that because the English football can't do that because of the single broadcast feed, whereas all these other European leagues have the utilisation of that technology to enable the regionalisation of the deals, which is obviously more efficient.
Yeah, I guess also just to mention also like the Chinese market is obviously a massive market. It's the population's, maybe over 1 billion people. So, I think the incentive for the clubs around Europe and in the Premier League partnering with these Asian betting operators is also to increase their visibility in that massive Chinese market as well. So, I think it kind of goes hand in hand with some of these deals.
Now, if we could just take things back to the UK, we've mentioned quite a lot throughout this discussion and on multiple times on other episodes of iGaming Daily that, in the UK, we've got as Callum mentioned, the upcoming withdrawal of Premier League front of shirt sponsorships. We've also had the Gambling Act review and the whole debate around sponsorship with that. Now, looking forward, what impact do we see these deals having on the future of betting sponsorships in UK football? Because, in my personal opinion, I think a lot of these deals have contributed fairly heavily to a more negative perception of betting sponsorships among some sections of fans. George, if you could take the lead with this one, please.
Yeah, look, I think I think we're in a position in the UK where we kind of know what's coming down the track with the withdrawal of advertising on the Premier League shirts. I think other than that, I can't see anything else changing. To be completely honest, I think it would need to be, a complete revisit from the government or something. Something would have to be a major catalyst for any further change to take place. The reality is that the investment that comes from the industry is just too great of a support for sport and sports infrastructure to withdraw any other or impose any other kind of restrictions on gambling advertising at this stage. In the Championship, there's been a reduction in kind of partnerships for a while at a club level and in the EFL. However, the EFL is still supported hugely by the deal that they've got with Sky Bet. And I think if you remove that deal with Sky Bet across the EFL, I don't think you find a replacement at a like-for-like value, which ultimately hurts then the football infrastructure of the country. So, yeah, I can't see. And by the way, we're just focusing on football when we're talking about this. That doesn't even, begin to touch some of the other sports which are supported by gambling industry sponsorship pounds as well, which are crucially important to other sports being able to run and all the rest of it. Rugby league with Betfred and obviously others. So I think the Asian deals, what impact does it have? I think we'll always see that people don't like it and people don't want these deals on the front of shirts. We'll see what the impact of that is once front of shirt deals are finally removed from the equation in a few years' time, and whether that makes, sentiment change at all. But beyond what we know is going to happen, without there being some kind of government intervention or some kind of unforeseen catalyst for further change, I don't think we'll see much more change beyond that.
Yeah. Just to add on to George's point, we know that the Premier League ban is coming at the end of the 2025-2026 season, and so when it got announced last April, it was kind of to give those Premier League teams who have pre-existing deals in place as kind of like a window in to kind of sort deals out before the ban's enforced. But yeah, on the face surface of it, if you were just to be a regular football fan who doesn't, necessarily like gambling sponsorship on the front of your club's football kit, with the recent deals still being made, you could kind of see, well, is anything changing? But I think in the meantime, it's just that process. I think clubs still are in. They're still kind of recovering from COVID and also the current economic situation as well. So I think they're trying to get as much money as they probably can. But, I think when the ban does come into place, I think we will start to see clubs kind of looking at Real Madrid and Inter Milan with their deal with Sky Sports and kind of going down different avenues. And it's also worth mentioning that sleeve, the gambling sponsorship ban will not be applicable for sleeve sponsorship. So I think you will probably end up seeing maybe some gambling sponsors on the sleeves of Premier League clubs.
100%. I just want to add one thing actually, because I think you made a really good point, Callum, there when you mentioned COVID, and I have heard, in circles, COVID referenced as a reason to try and, recoup sponsorship pounds to help in the recovery of clubs. What we have to remember though is, and I'd probably argue this quite strongly, gambling sponsorship, if you take the Championship and the Premier League combined, in terms of the amount of clubs that had deals pre-COVID, it was probably more prolific than it is now. So we might hear that cited as a reason for it, but the reason is just commercialization, being competitive on the pitch, needing to bring in the maximum amount of revenue that can't hide away from it. It just is what it is. It's the commercialization of sport, and it just happens to be in a category that not everybody's comfortable with.
Yeah, definitely agree. Yeah, definitely.
Some great points made here, guys. Yeah, the financial one, as you both mentioned, is obviously hugely important. And as you said as well, George, this debate does go beyond just football and the Premier League and the EFL. There's lots of other sports that do rely heavily on that, as like the Rugby Super League, as you mentioned. I think this is all we've got time for today, but to both of you, thanks so much for taking the time to join us and discuss this quite interesting topic with us. To the listeners, we'll do the usual and put some links in the description for this to both the Insider Sport and SBC News stories to give you some more context on that. Please stay tuned to both of those sites as well as the other ones across the SBC Media Network for all your updates and news. And on the event side of things, please check out the page for that, for the SBC Summit Latin America coming up next month, between October 31st and November 2nd. As George said, it's a great event, so please check that out. Again, guys, thanks so much for joining us, and to our listeners, bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of iGaming Daily, brought to you in conjunction with SBC Summit Latino America, being held at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Miami on the 31st of October to the 2nd of November. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News Network. Happy reading.